After cleaning it in such manner approaching the hole, let's remove it directly next to it. Could you please? Kevin, do you see that there? That seems like a very fancy device, don't you think? It appears to be quite a bit. I'm finished. Come on, come on. In order to help the seasoned miner and his team meet their gold extraction goals for the season, they had to purchase this inventive contraption, which had been assembled by a renegade miner, and then endure the challenging chore of carrying this enormous machine for hundreds of miles. It's more hundreds of miles. Let's see when Tony Beets found an abandoned gold wash plant during the gold rush, he did. It appears that we will once again be watching these gold miners and their team as they attempt to maximize their time in the Yukon mines. Although it can't be simple, people like Parker Schnabel, Rick Ness, and Tony Beets need to capitalize on the fact that gold's value is at an all-time high right now. Just look at Fred Lewis, who must make the most important mining decisions of his life. Naturally, there is Rickius, who must cope with the startling incidents that occurred while he and his expanding team were out there looking for gold. He is consequently compelled to make choices he never imagined having to make. As he and his mining team decide to search for the gold they all desire, even Parker Schnabel is compelled to take a huge risk. They all understand that mining is serious business. They must therefore exert every effort to obtain as much gold as possible. That's presumably why Tony was thrilled to discover a device that seemed to have the potential to permanently alter the direction of his gold mining activities. Now Tony Beet and his team are currently preparing to go to work while at Dawson City, while the others deal with the various problems that come with working as the mental bosses of their own businesses. The seasoned mining head was ready to embark on his favorite pastime, a flight in a helicopter. Who doesn't enjoy flying in a helicopter? It has never been this high, really. You have to occasionally try something new. Winged helicopter. We are left wondering why the veteran miner and his colleagues chose to take what some may consider a joyride as we see the helicopter lift off with Tony and a few of his crew. After all, some people could believe they aren't worthy of such a treat. By that time, Tony and his team had only collected roughly 1/3 of their gold haul of 3,000 ounces, and they were halfway through the season. Fans who might be concerned about what this veteran miner might be up to might take some comfort in the fact that he was only on this helicopter flight because he was looking for a way to make up for his team's failures. If he wants to take advantage of the record-high gold prices that he and the other gold miners have been observing in the market, that is the only thing he can do. They had apparently never been this high before, and it would be foolish to pass up this chance to earn a substantial sum of money. Tony and his team made the decision to pursue a lead to a mobile wash plant that might have been abandoned in the midst of the woods in order to increase their profits, because we'll return sooner rather than later if we can get that monster out. In any case, she is somewhat steep in spots as we use this aircraft to descend that hill via a sort of dungeon. They wanted to find this enormous machine so they could use it for themselves. Who was to blame? Who was to blame? Take a look at this 35-ton trauma that was created almost 30 years ago by a creative gold miner. The gold miner was planning to create one of the most hospitable and effective wash plants ever created. And the 40-foot drum that comes with it, then the wheels that power it make the evident. Unfortunately, this machine only operated for almost a year before its users abandoned it, suggesting that it was more of an idea than a perfect example of execution. Since Tony had spent nearly $500,000 on this cutting-edge piece of technology, he had many ideas for it. The experienced miner made a brave move. Tony was obviously thrilled with this impressive-looking wash plant, even though it might have only been utilized for one mining season. Oh, Kevin, did you notice it there? That seems like a very fancy device, don't you think? It appears to be something I would purchase. Yes, indeed it does. In addition to being large and intimidating, the machine appeared to have been expertly constructed by its creator. Despite its enormous size, it still appeared to be a machine that would be simple to use, and even the wheels that were fixed to it appeared to have withstood the test of time. Aside from this, anyone who understands how this machine operates would be able to appreciate why Tony was so ecstatic to discover this groundbreaking device. One would be impressed by how it spits the tailings straight out of the back of the machine after processing the pay dirt that is put into it that is put into it. Once the machine has slewed everything in its path, it can be readily controlled thanks to the 4 enormous wheels that are connected onto it. It would then be able to proceed to the next site and sleeve through yet another load of pay dirt. Tony is obviously smitten with this particular plant. Much like a child is with a new toy, it is evident from speaking with other team members that he sees no reason why the 35-ton trauma couldn't improve their lot in life. Given that it still appears to be in good condition, Tony's decision to take the chance and buy this clever equipment is understandable. In light of this, Tony is keen to move the machine so they can assemble it in time to maintain business operations. It might even be simpler to move than a dredge, given how mobile it is intended to be. That's what the guy and Tony believe. Anyway, Tony described how he couldn't help but purchase the machine after they realized that it would turn around their already dismal season, especially after the owner was compelled to lower his initial asking price of almost $1 million. So, the fact that he was able to purchase the trauma for just $400,000 may turn out to be the best deal of the year, and he was thrilled with the steal. You must give something a try, or else you will grow old and wonder why you didn't do it. You're able to afford it. Bingo if it works. Bingo if it works. Hopefully this equipment will allow them to extract the remaining 2/3 of their season's aim. Upon returning to his Paradise Hill camp, Tony promptly assembled a team of 7 guys to assist him in using a plethora of equipment to get the trauma on the road. He was consequently compelled to suspend all other activities in order to complete the duty of dragging the Traumat to camp. They might have to pay roughly $60,000 a day, but if they're lucky, they might be able to return as soon as the trauma is functioning. To make money, you must spend money. You must spend money. It appeared like the men were prepared to complete their task for the day, with Tony's son Mike driving and the crew's heavy equipment specialist at the wheel. Mike mentioned that getting their belongings across on the boat might be the most difficult aspect of this undertaking as they set out. When you consider it, it's a daunting endeavor. One could be shocked to hear that the length of the equipment is what could cause the issues he was concerned about, even though they may assume that this is because of the weight of the machines and other equipment that they must bring on the ship. The ferry was just 80 feet long, but the equipment was roughly 85 feet long. Since it might be too dangerous for the people on board, they might not let him load the equipment onto their ferry. They might have to use the closest bridge to the Yukon to finish their quest if this turns out to be the case. Unfortunately, this bridge is over 200 meters away from them in the incorrect direction, so even if it seems like a solution, it can turn out to be a difficult undertaking. Who said it was simple to be a miner? When they arrived at the ferry, the answers were revealed. When she saw the equipment they hoped to convey via her ferry, the captain was just as anxious as Mike. Fortunately, when they discovered that the boat could transport the lengthy equipment, the tension gave way to relaxation. They could now leave for their destination. After taking the ferry across the river, Mike and the other guys didn't waste any time in getting on the road. They traveled across the Globe Highway to Moose Creek. It is regarded as one of the world's northernmost highways. For your trivia nights, how about that? It acquires too much lean momentum, and the weight might topple my vehicle if I drive too fast through the creek and collide with a boulder with my back tire. In order to start the process of transporting Tony's new favorite toy back to Paradise Hill, which was more than 100 miles away, Tony and his group eventually gathered at the road, leading to Moose Creek. They can't avoid doing this, especially when they were looking directly at a season that didn't work out. If they want to get their season off to a fast start, they must finish this task. Tony cautions the staff to exercise caution when performing their duties, even if they must finish this as soon as possible. Anything worthwhile is worthwhile when done well. Once all, Tony and his crew started working as hard as they could to properly transfer their enormous new trauma once he gave them the motivational speech. As the other guys followed Tony's lead, all you could hear was the crunching of dirt and the roaring of motors. Fritters. Mike and the other guys arrived at the trauma site shortly after. They were going to start working now, removing this enormous machine from the area. Given that Tony needed to return the equipment to base in the allotted 3 days, it was not going to be simple. There he has a large number of individuals and machines. They must be capable of completing this mission. If they were going to be successful in this kind of endeavor, then it appears that they could do it if they followed Tony's plan. Tony believed that dismantling the machine completely was the first step they needed to take if they were to succeed. They intended to disconnect the conveyor first. They intended to disassemble the E-cell flanks after that. Following this, they would take on the hopper before confronting the enormous drum that Tony had become so attracted with upon discovering this enormous trauma. We'll start the hydraulics here when you remove that hopper. All right. No, another person. They fixed it, you see. Yes. Moreover, it is intact. Therefore, that won't work. As anticipated, the crew immediately set to work disassembling the conveyor belt. The boys did as Tony said, and this seemed to happen without any problems. I hope that all of this work will not be in vain. After finishing the conveyor, Tony thought it might be best to conclude the day so they could finish strong. In addition to enjoying a satisfying lunch and a nice beer, the boys deserved to end the day on a high note because they had worked a hard shift today. A wise decision from a capable leader. Decision from a capable leader. The team went back to the roadhead where they could camp out in the bunkhouse they had set up there, eager to take advantage of their boss's generosity. The others set up camp in their vehicles. Even Tony was positive he would be dozing off in his pickup, Lina's pickup. He is a tough guy, and even though he is getting older, it appears that this wily old kid can still compete with the best of them. In fact, he had a spot in the truck for his shoes. It appears that this location is superior to the Ritz. The only thing left to do was enjoy the evening with the other guys. In order for them to return to work as soon as feasible the next day, Tony and the colleagues immediately resumed their work in the morning. It didn't matter that they were roughly 160 miles south of the Arctic Circle. The important thing was that they returned to Paradise Hill with this enormous trauma so they could start working. And they had to get this done quickly, since it was late in the season and they risked being snowed in if they wasted any more time. They were pressed for time. Although some might believe that Tony and the rest of the crew would be enjoying some of nature's most gorgeous weather, this meant that they would have to wait until the next year to relocate their amazing new machine. They are unable to have that. Since we'll be returning sooner rather than later, let's get that out of there. Anyway, please pay attention when we down the slope. She can be a bit steep at times. That might not only jeopardize their season's 3,000-ounce gold aim, but it might also indicate that they were prepared to abandon their machine to sustain additional harm from potential rust and condensation from the snowfall. They can't have it, for sure. Tony and the other guys started working after being reminded of the potential consequences of not achieving their objectives. It was evident that Cody took care to clip the SL box off correctly. After everything was finished, Mike skillfully lifted the SL box away using his large machinery. In order to get this concert on the road, they had to hoist the 20-ton, 40-foot drum, so the work didn't stop. To be a miner boy, Tony intends to accomplish this by retracting the hydraulic support, which will allow the trauma to rest on its wheels. The team would then be able to take the frame out from underneath the drum after lifting the drum. We believed that the primary purpose of these men was to mine gold. As they discovered that a steel plate had been welded onto one of the machine's legs, it became evident that this operation was not simple. To support the frame, this was done. As a result, some of the hydraulic pressure will be released. It seems that they would need to put an end to this if they wanted to make any progress. Making this choice wasn't hard, and soon the group started working on chopping this thing off. Indeed, they had to exercise caution to avoid damaging themselves or their equipment, but that is just the nature of their job. Jordan Eagle saw his life flash before his eyes when the machine reacted to its loss of support while they were cutting off the steel plate, quickly reminding them that this was a dangerous job. Fortunately, all was well. As a result, Tony boldly assisted the team in laughing off the minor mishap before they resumed their job. Given that they had only been on the relocation job for 2 days, it is easy to understand Tony's incessant desire to get his boys and girls moving so they could go. The seasoned mine boss's ability to guide his workers to do the necessary tasks was truly amazing to observe. Fortunately, they had access to some of the best equipment available, as well as some of the most talented workers in the industry. Tony was thrilled to find that the next stage of the project was within reach when the machine was disassembled. They appeared prepared to return to Paradise Hill when they were ready, and if not, then whatever. But I wouldn't for any reason. She seems like a goat to me. I also believe so. What crow? Let's leave this place. However, they had to move the drum and other roadside components onto the highway in order to accomplish this. They accomplished this by making sections out of the machine's parts that would allow them to be fastened to chains that would secure them during transportation. In order to avoid having to finish this as dusk descends on the land, they had to finish it in 3 hours. Luckily for them, everything appears to proceed smoothly, and soon they were indeed en route. Nevertheless, they had to be careful not to get carried away because they might have a horrifying disaster if they overspent or ran into any rocks or pebbles on the road. No, in this case, it's possible that slow and steady will win out. The fact that one side of Mike's truck blew up in the air while they were traveling shows how dangerous this is. Given that he still had to traverse the numerous miles of switchbacks he would need to traverse in order to return home, he had better take his time. Regretfully, Mike would encounter difficulties whenever they encountered a slushy road. He soon discovered that he required the help of the rest of the crew since his tires were spinning in the mud on the road. It's only about the outside one since the inside one is good. I must have seen something approaching a corner then. It appears to have torn up a rim. Mike discovered that he was now en route to do this trip again after they managed to get him out of the muck using their heavy machinery. It is always the team that makes the team work. After overcoming that challenge, Mike and the team discovered that they could remove the vehicle from Moose Creek in the 3 days they had set for themselves. Fantastic work. At this point, the next step was to load the trauma into a truck so they could travel to Paradise Hill and use it to turn their season around. Is it possible? They were even capable of doing this prior to being at the mercy of the weather. Tony was obviously thrilled that they could finish it before the rain or snow arrived. Therefore, nothing could prevent them from bringing this gadget home now that they had completed the most difficult task. Tony was right to think that they wouldn't let the rain or snow slow them down, even if it did fall the following day. He thanked them for their efforts thus far and urged them to put forth their best effort to complete the last portion of this undoubtedly difficult and demanding journey to Moose Creek. That's what a diligent mining supervisor and his team live like. Isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible? Only in order to reach their season-ending goal. It was a challenging effort for the team to move this massive machine hundreds of miles away from their heads. Even if we overlook the challenge of such a tough journey, we cannot deny that this was still a gamble of some kind, since we expect that it will enable them to extract roughly 2,000 ounces of gold before the season ends. They were already defeated. We're already defeated. They tried to get this machine to their base at a cost of almost $60,000 every day. As these guys do their hardest to be successful in their gold rush, let's hope that their gamble was worthwhile. In order to help the seasoned miner and his team meet their gold extraction goals for the season, they had to purchase this inventive contraption, which had been assembled by a renegade miner, and then endure the challenging chore of carrying this enormous machine for hundreds of miles. I'm quite interested in learning what kind of values exist in this drought. To never know, I would like to take a taste from those. I might be a little fortunate. Tony Beets, a well-known gold miner, embarked on a sentimental trip to his former rich claim close to Paradise Hill on a recent episode of Gold Rush. Tony's trip promises exciting adventures, uncovering either long-sought riches or unexpected problems, as there are 30 years of unwritten tales waiting to be discovered. Tony uses the heavy-duty 460 excavator, designed for extensive mining operations, because he recognizes the value of several excavation sites. The 460 excavator's sturdy design and remarkable digging power enable it to transport large amounts of rock and dirt with ease, which is essential for Tony's big project, close to Paradise Hill. Tony reflects on the history of Paradise Hills, remembering their mining activities 30 years ago. In order to dispose of the dug soil, they spread overburden, the layer that covers potentially valuable pay dirt that is rich in gold and silver, onto a specific section of the hill. As a result, 50,000 yards of overburden, enough to fill 15 Olympic-sized swimming pools, accumulated, demonstrating their persistent search for minerals. I've very much made up my mind. This may be a beautiful small piece if we strip it and mush it. In fact, it resembles a piggy bank that I abandoned 30 years ago. Tony must now reshape the mountain in order to reach the rich pay dirt hidden inside, thinking back on previous excavations and planning his approach to get to the target depth. Woot. Tony maintains his optimism in spite of the difficulties, encouraged by the advantageous circumstances of high gold prices and cheap fuel costs, which portend well for profitability. The goal of Tony and his team's excavation work is to uncover the unspoiled virgin land beneath the overburden, which is distinguished by lighter-colored gravels that are packed with gold. Drawing on years of experience that taught him to approach every possible finding with a balanced viewpoint, Tony is cautious. Tony uses both intuition and knowledge to examine the landscape and determine whether or not the excavated ground is virgin. Naman. Although the presence of gravel would be encouraging, it does not necessarily indicate the presence of virgin ground. His sharp eye detects white gravel, which suggests the existence of gold amid worthless brown gravel and portends a profitable pay streak. Despite uncertainty, determining its length, which ranges from 10 to 40 feet, requires a rigorous technique. Despite having to eliminate 50,000 yards of overburden, Tony is still certain of the pay streak's worth. He realizes that this excavation is like opening a long-forgotten piggy bank that contains millions of dollars in gold. Tony considers past mining operations while inviting his daughter Monica to Paradise Hill, acknowledging that he is unsure of the scope of their earlier efforts. Tony can tell the difference between barren soil and gold-containing excavated ground because of his proficiency in evaluating landscapes. Tony and his group make excellent progress in mining the piggy bank cut throughout the course of the week. To evaluate their accomplishments and count the amount of gold extracted, the Beets family gets together. Monica highlights the scope of their activities by revealing the tremendous effort required to dispatch 4 rock trucks around the clock. Tony, the project's main motivator, wants to obtain at least 85 ounces to cover the expense of excavation. Each gold nugget is meticulously weighed, and the final number exceeds projections, causing the crew to celebrate as they reach their goal. Let's see, the well. However, it was somewhat expensive to place a D10 there for a few days. Even though I am aware that fuel is low right now, it still adds up. I am aware. Dude, you have to gamble a little bit sometimes. I'll take a chance then. The gold that was taken out of the piggy bank cut is worth more than $185,000, which is a substantial amount by any standard. Tony admits the result is quite good, even though he had hoped for a larger venue. Acknowledging the inherent dangers and uncertainties associated with mining. In light of the findings, Tony highlights that, similar to other industries, mining frequently necessitates taking measured risks in order to succeed. Notwithstanding the difficulties, he says he is satisfied with the result, reaffirming his acceptance of the inherent risks in the mining industry. He emphasizes the value of patience in the face of adversity by attributing the operation's success to his team's commitment and diligence. The Beets family's tenacity and fortitude in achieving their objectives are best demonstrated by their mining activities in Paradise Hill. They faced challenges, but they overcame them with perseverance and cooperation, eventually turning a profit. Tony Beets assesses the operation's present status as the mining season goes on, pointing out that it has been a promising season thus far. Tony sees a big chance to make money because gold prices are between $1,700 and $1,800 per ounce. According to him, there is enough evidence to show their capacity to process at these price points profitably. Even though the season has started later than expected, Tony is optimistic that they can make up lost time and take advantage of the advantageous market conditions. The success of the giant cut, which Tony believes might produce up to 3,000 ounces of gold, gives him more confidence. In the meantime, Mike Beets, his son, makes sure the ESL plant runs at maximum efficiency, handling 350 yards of pay dirt every hour. As evidence of their dedication to increasing productivity, the ESL plant, a crucial piece of machinery in mining operations, effectively collects gold from silt using an e-cell box. Look at that. See and loaded. It has a great deal of gold. In fact, it's thrilling. Oh, but you call it eager. Tony also looks into other possible quick profit opportunities on Paradise Hill, understanding their significance in boosting revenue and achieving seasonal goals. Tony admits that more gold is required to meet their seasonal goals, even though they were able to remove 100 ounces from the piggy bank cut. Despite producing a significant amount, the hunker cut did not satisfy their needs. So Tony takes a calculated approach by looking at the old-timers' tailings, which are the remains of earlier mining operations left by miners who worked in the area before him. Tony has been interested in these tailings for a while and thinks that the current high gold prices are a good time to research and take advantage of them. The Beets family discovers something important on Paradise Hill, a sizable pile of gold-rich tailings that previous miners have left behind. These tailings, in contrast to other deposits, are easily accessible on the surface and don't require overburden removal. Noting that they can easily gather the tailings and process them through the ESA-L plant, Tony is ecstatic about this discovery. Because the tailings have already been slewed, they are free of clay and other contaminants, making processing simpler. Tony expects a substantial increase in revenue from processing these tailings, which will further boost their already successful season, given the lucrative prospects brought about by the high price of gold and low processing expenses. In order to maintain a steady flow of material down the slope, Monica manages the tailings processing, feeding 100 yards of pay dirt per hour into the Kiwi plant for treatment. To ensure complete separation of gold from waste, Desiree, the new loader operator, carefully removes the fine tailings from the conclusion of the SL run. Therefore, I believe it would be worthwhile to try. What are your thoughts? Let's see, shall we? Check out what's inside. Better yet, perhaps use a little Dremel to conduct some tests. Yes, we'll simply proceed from there. Monica talks about the old-timer cut's potential and is hopeful that adding more pumps would increase output. However, at the moment, just the trauma is in use. However, when Desiree runs into something, damaging the equipment and forcing a shutdown, the mining plant's progress is halted. Tony Beets emphasizes the gravity of the situation by pointing out that the mill loses around $2,000 for every hour it is out of commission. Kevin Beets, a vital Beets family member renowned for his mechanical know-how, shows up right away to evaluate the damage and determine the source of the issue. Kevin investigates the problem and concludes that it is caused by the operator inadvertently catching the cable with the bucket while moving, which dragged a beam forward and twisted the run. Kevin suggests straightening the bent bar and changing the run's angle to fix the issue. Duties that call for technical expertise and accuracy. The crew eventually resumes operations after the repairs are finished, even though the process took longer than anticipated and caused the plant to be offline for 8 hours. Monica is especially excited about the old-timer cut's possibilities, remembering their early slewing attempts prior to the technological issue and looking forward to the outcomes now that it has been fixed. The workforce concentrates on increasing output and making up lost time now that the factory is back up and running. Similar to Monica's enthusiasm, Kevin is intrigued by the results of the old-timer cut and the potential to locate hidden gems. Excellent. Yes. He admits that the small trauma was effective in the past and is still hopeful that a significant quantity of gold will be recovered. The physics of the processing process are demonstrated by the way that larger particles are held and moved to the end of the trommel, while smaller particles fall through the perforations as the trommel drum rotates, stirring the material inside. Precious gold is successfully separated from the surrounding material using this technique. Now that the facility is back up and running, the crew works hard to process the material from the old-timer cut, meticulously examining each scoop of earth to separate the valuable stuff from the useless. The workforce is unwavering in their resolve to maximize gold recovery despite the operation's labor-intensive and exacting nature. The factory operates without any additional technical problems during the day. The Beets family gathers on Paradise Hill to evaluate Tony's treasure search among the tailings of the old-timers. They weigh the gold that was extracted by running pace oil through Mike's trauma in the mega cut before looking at the results. Tony wants to reach 3,000 of this season, which is equal to 177.0 a week. They are insufficient though, producing only 160.430 or $287 per ounce. Moving on to the old-timers' tailings, Monica describes the difficulties they encountered, such as loader problems and a shutdown. They were able to operate the facility for 4 hours in spite of obstacles. Tony usually wants to get 1 ounce of gold for every 100 yards, but with these tailings, he expects to make half that amount. Tony says he's happy with 1 or 2 ounces from the 400 yard, but the real result is better than he could have imagined. They find a total of 4 after weighing the gold that was taken out of the tailings. 22.0 is worth $7,400, which confirmed Tony's worries about the old-timers' tailings potential. The family considers it a success and is happy with the outcome. I would thus declare that again in 1 hour, correct? Yes, that's wrong, you know. No, that's what you do every day. The elderly woman continues to produce. Of course. The Beets family finds encouragement in the old-timers' success, which encourages them to go deeper into the area in search of other prospects. They said they are happy with the result and plan to keep doing things in the region. But as they evaluate the harm to their trauma, they face a major setback the next day at Paradise Hill. Tony's group must perform the arduous work of removing the trauma in order to properly evaluate the degree of the damage. Before lifting the 40-ton barrel, Tony gives Mike instructions to move the conveyor out of the way and raise the trommel first. Given that the trauma hasn't been moved in more than 10 years, Kevin recognizes the difficulties in disassembling and relocating it. He is still optimistic that they will be able to assess the damage and decide whether it can be fixed once the barrel is on the ground. Mike carefully handles the barrel to safely remove it from its current location, which is their first priority right now. Kevin examines the trauma more closely and finds some alarming problems, such as cracks in the rings, one of which is about to break off, and 80% of the wedges are fractured. He makes it clear that the trauma cannot be utilized as is because a piece that has been snapped off would make it useless. Since the trommel is an essential piece of equipment for their mining operation, Tony and his team are disappointed by the news. Their capacity to extract gold and treat pay dirt is significantly limited without it. Tony understands how serious the issue is and that it will take a lot of time, energy, and money to replace or repair the trommel. We'll concentrate on the hydraulics here when we remove that hopper. All right, no, another person. They fixed that, as you can see. Yes. Moreover, it is intact. Therefore, that won't work. They are committed to overcoming this obstacle in order to maintain their profitable mining operation at Paradise Hill, and they are still focused on reaching their seasonal goal of 3,000 ounces. Tony thinks about possible repairs while the Beets family assesses the trauma's damage. He says they could fix the problem fast if they had 4 or 5 welders, but Kevin notes that there aren't enough of them. Before the season ends, Tony suggests using 2 welders, 1 on each side, but Kevin rejects the plan because of a shortage of personnel. Tony's not happy and asks whether they will have to stop mining instead. Frisboya. Kevin's reaction is depressing since he admits that there isn't enough personnel or time left in the season to heal the trauma in time to achieve their goals. Kevin considers the difficulties they encountered after a season of painstakingly maintaining every machine on the hill and acknowledges that, in spite of their best efforts, they have arrived at a point where they believe they will never be able to overcome the barriers that lie ahead. He worries that they won't be able to properly clean up at the end of the season, because the trommel is essential for extracting gold and processing pay dirt. Ruby and her cousin Mike join the Beets family for the season's last gold trip as the mining season comes to an end. Ruby admits that they had a really successful season overall, in spite of the difficulties. The family is ready to see the fruits of their labor and commitment as they assemble around the scale. Their hopes of achieving a new season record are dashed, though, when the trauma fails before they can slew the full payload. To beat the 5,000-ounce season record, Tony aims to attain 400 ounces. Mike provides the final total, 694.20, which is worth $1.02 million after meticulous counting. The Beets family reaches new heights as the glory hole surpasses expectations and produces the season's finest gold haul. All of it is pocket money. This is quite slick in my opinion. I'm quite pleased with this. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite pleased with that. With an incredible 5,295 in gold this season, they have broken their previous record and achieved their first $9 million season. Tony shows his happiness, highlighting how pleased he is with the result. Looking back on their accomplishments, Mike and Kevin, who are currently in charge as chief mechanic and head of cutting, have been instrumental in Tony Beets' success. Their commitment, tenacity, and wise choices have all helped the family enjoy a successful season. A mechanic and head of cutting instrumental and tough. In anticipation of a change of scenery and a well-earned respite following a taxing season, the Beets family arranges a trip to Mexico. Before preparing for the next mining season, they hope to relax and take advantage of the nice weather. A month later, Tony Beets is approached by a gold miner who wants to borrow some equipment. Tony sees an opening and chooses to rent their 25-ton kiwi plant to the miner at Dominion Creek, which is 20 meters away after realizing that it has been idle and rotting all season. To complete the task, Tony assembles his best employees from the 80% cut. To provide stability during transit, they start by fastening the plant with chains. But when Mike starts to move the plant and load it into trucks, it suddenly moves and tumbles off the platform. Tony makes the decision to use 2 loaders in order to save the day and guarantee the plant's safe transfer. What was formerly thought to be a simple and lucrative 4-hour task has now become a more difficult and time-consuming undertaking. Attach that chain link to the opposite end of the chain. Music all right, next rescue. They only need to hook the chain from the bottom to the top. The 2 loaders will retreat. They'll use the bucket to catch it once it topples over. In any case, Tony comments on the regrettable development, emphasizing that they now have a $300,000 piece of equipment on its side, illustrating the sharp difference between its potential for profit and the current situation. The kiwi plant slipped off the track when one of the chains broke when he was moving at a moderate pace of 13 mph, according to Mike. The miner who had planned to hire the equipment is clearly taken aback because he had anticipated receiving it undamaged. Under Tony's direction, operator Brandon Carr joins Mike and the loaders to make things right. Tony gives them instructions to fasten one end of a chain to the plant and the other to the loaders as they cooperate to turn the overturned plant back upright. Tony keeps a tight eye on the process to ensure safety as they carefully and gradually raise the plant upright, using the 2 loaders on either side. They manage to get the plant to stand up after a few stressful moments. Tony then gives them instructions to move the plant to the middle of the road and take off the chain. They may enter the plant from both sides thanks to this calculated move, which makes it easier to load it onto the truck. The crew carefully maneuvers the plant into position under Tony's exact directions. Tony instructs them to load into the truck using the scissor neck after it is centered on the road. They load the kiwi plant carefully, making sure it is firmly in position before being transported. After loading the plant successfully, Tony decides to make the chain a little higher than it was previously for extra protection. This works well since they move the plant safely to Shane's Dominion Creek property. The kiwi plant makes it safely to the claim after an 8-hour drive from Paradise Hill. Tony is in charge of the crew as they carefully unload the plant from the truck at the claim. Tony praises the team's efforts in the successful delivery in spite of the shipping difficulties. He acknowledges the short amount of time left in the season while also admitting their goal of achieving 5,000 ounces for the year. That's really encouraging, folks. That ought to contribute to the difference. That's fantastic. Better yet, Tony is still optimistic about their prospects though, especially since they are concentrating on 2 big cuts on Paradise Hill that have already shown noteworthy outcomes. He highlights the simple procedure of picking up the soil, putting it in the SL box, and then extracting the gold, adding that he believes there might be more to be discovered. Tony emphasizes the necessity of having at least 2 trucks in order to optimize revenue as mining activity at Paradise Hill increases. He begins the trommel with efficiency in mind, indicating the beginning of yet another demanding workday for the employees. In order to prevent any operational delays, Eric in particular is focused on quickly and efficiently removing the tailings while paying strict attention to prevent collisions. particularly the trauma. Eric tries, but as the trauma becomes trapped, something goes wrong. Something goes wrong. Eric quickly alerts Mike, who gives the personnel the order to temporarily shut down the plant in order to stop additional harm. After being promptly alerted to the problem, Tony rushes to the scene to evaluate the situation. Kevin, the chief mechanic, assesses the situation while the Paradise Hill team handles the critical problem with the trauma and worries that, should the issue be severe, they might have to shut down the entire operation. The trommel, 2 excavators, and a rock truck, all essential to the mining process, have been delayed as a result of the problem. As he pinpoints the issue, Kevin's technical proficiency is evident. A defective O-ring, a tiny rubber ring that is necessary to seal the tubing that supplies the excavator arm with hydraulic fluid. An O-ring fracture results in hydraulic fluid leakage, which lowers pressure and paralyzes the excavator boom. To the relief of the crew, Kevin quickly and precisely fixes the O-ring, allowing the excavator to operate smoothly again. Tony Beets is excited to see if their efforts at the piggy bank will pay off after a difficult week of frozen ground enclosures in the Swallow Cut. The crew reports less gold than anticipated, though, which puts pressure on their 5,000-ounce season objective. They only retrieve 78.70 from the piggy bank, but Tony needs 260 to reach this goal. Although Tony is unhappy with the outcome, he recognizes that mining has its ups and downs and stresses the importance of continuing to maximize productivity. Tony reports the next day that the pump is still broken, making it impossible to extract gold. The crew faces a major obstacle when they are unable to sluice due to the pumps remaining dormant, which results in a loss of gold production. Tony chooses to move the brand new 11-ton mega pump to the Essel Pond in order to solve the problem. Tony makes sure the pump is lifted and delivered safely to fix the issue, which is a crucial responsibility. Tony Beets and his crew encounter many difficulties and disappointments throughout the Paradise Hill mining season. Despite logistical challenges, technological difficulties, and the pressure to reach their lofty target of 5,000 ounces of gold, they persevere with tenacity and commitment. As they negotiate unforeseen gold findings and old-timers' tailings and take advantage of chances like glory holes, Tony's strategic thinking and creative ideas are crucial to their success. They surpass their record gold goal, obtaining more than 5,000 ounces for the season, in spite of setbacks. As the season comes to an end, they take stock of their journey, feeling thankful for their accomplishments and hopeful for what lies ahead.